Hi there, and welcome. Welcome to the annual conference for, I believe AFWA is how we would pronounce it, although it might just be AFWA. My name's Alison Hadden. I am super excited to be here today to share my keynote called No Time to Waste, how to carpe the S out of life. I am super excited to be here, and I really thank the organization for inviting me to join. Obviously, we all wish that we could be together today, but welcome to the world of 2020, which I'll be talking about. It has been quite the year for all of us, myself included, but we're going to make the most of it. I'm excited that you're here. There are going to be some exciting exercises that we're going to get to do together, but I'm going to try and keep energy high. I am going to picture that I'm in a room with all of you, with hundreds of people in Chicago, which was the original plan, but we are adaptable to change. We are resilient humans, and we are going to make the best of this. So happy to be here. I'm going to be changing into what I think is going to be, the best option in terms of being able to see me and being able to see my slides. My slides are not that important. Slides never are. There's not going to be a lot of text on them. This is probably the text heaviest slide. And this will enable me to dance over here while there's a little bit of stuff going on right there. But again, focus should be hopefully on me and not the slides. I will promise also to use my hands a lot, which I do even when I don't want to, and we'll go from there. So, okay, no time to waste. What is this about? Well, first, you don't have to worry about reading this. It's not important, but it's just a little bit about me and my background to let you know kind of why I'm here and why I was asked to speak to all of you. I've spent the last 20 years as a marketing executive in tech. I most recently was at a company called MindBody. Previous to that, I was at a company called Glassdoor, and before that, I was with Active.com, which later became the Active Network. So I was not a job jumper. I was one that was really conscientious and intentional about the companies where I worked. For me and my career path, which if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn at Alison Hadden, feel free to do so and just let me know that you came from this conference so that I accept it. But essentially, the thread throughout was I'm a builder. I am a person that's responsible for strategy because I can sort of see things before they're there. I know how to scale things quickly. And lucky for me, I had the experience of all three companies growing from startup to billion-dollar exits, be it an IPO, an acquisition by a PE firm, or an acquisition by a much larger company in China, which was the case with Glassdoor. So I have experience in professional environments where we are growing at hyperspeed, where we have few resources to do so, no roadmap, no game plan. And in my career, it's been my job within whatever my function was, which grew over time, to determine the best course of action. And it was trial by fire in many situations. It was being super scrappy. It was leading large organizations, but being willing to jump in and press the buttons and do the actual work whenever it was needed. And those are frankly the only professional environments that I know. So I know all of you working in accounting and finance. I'm the sales and marketing person. Hopefully I'm not the person that pisses you guys off or doesn't complete their expense reports properly, or in my earlier days was doing larger business deals with companies and maybe not involving the right people all the time. So my apologies to anyone maybe I've worked with in the past. But that's what I know professionally. I know a world of uncertainty, of no roadmap, of pressure and anxiety to hit really aggressive growth goals. And as a result, though, professionally, I became incredibly adaptable. I became resilient after failing or trying things and having to go a different path. And I learned how to find some comfort in those chaotic environments, which I think is important. So I'm sure a lot of you relate to that. It also, as we all know, we spend, 80% of our lives working, most of us, or maybe that's 80% sleeping, but we spend a large percentage of our lives working. So it's really important that we recognize the environments that we're in and work, what we're learning from that, and then how to apply that in our personal lives, because whether we like it or not, it trickles over. So that was just a little bit about me. And that brings us to where we are today, all of us in this world of 2020, which, as you can see here, most people definitely would not recommend this year. I can think about a couple industries or a couple categories where I'm like, okay, who's had a good year? Bikes, outdoor companies like RVs and camping equipment. I think about sweatpants, aka athleisure, and because we're all working from home, sweatpants or no pants. They've all had great years. And then really, I think, any service that makes it easier for us or more comfortable for us to stay home. So from, at home food delivery, I'm very dependent on Uber Eats right now, to what else? Telehealth. That's something that's, as you'll learn about my personal story, something I have a lot of experience now. And even, my gosh, the boom in at-home fitness, on-demand fitness, having been the vice president of consumer marketing at MindBody, it's been incredible to watch the shift due to COVID of moving from gyms and boutique fitness studios and yoga studios to people finding ways to work out at home and then investing in either that technology or that hardware. So, that tread or that spin bike, or the streaming yoga classes. So I would say those are probably, though, the only ones, and the people involved in them are maybe the only ones that have had it. Oh, and Zoom. Zoom's had a really good year, right? Wish we all put some money into their stock a while ago. I do, at least. And it's not just COVID and the pandemic. From, losing legends like Kobe Bryant and RBG, man, that was a tough one, to racial injustice, raging wildfires in multiple states, and even, my God, we've had murder hornets this year. I don't know if you're aware or if you're in a city where there's been murder hornets. I just did a keynote for the Next Web conference, which is a primarily European audience because it typically takes place in Amsterdam, but this year it was obviously moved to virtual. And I made a joke about murder hornets, and apparently that's just a US thing, sadly. So, it's been a year for most of us where, just as we were recovering from the previous trauma and starting to get up again, we get kicked in the gut. It's just been nonstop. And the joke is that, when's this year going to be over? Welcome to 2020. The joke is, if you don't already suffer from an anxiety disorder, one will be assigned to you, and haha, we joke about this, but the anxiety and depression that is on the rise here in the US because of the pandemic is real and it's serious. Here in the US, depression rates self-reported by individuals have tripled since the pandemic, from less than 9% of the population reporting that they have clinically diagnosed depression to over 29%. The impacts of the pandemic and the anxiety, depression, grief, despair, loneliness, isolation, everything that is coming from what's going on right now, the researchers fear that we are going to fall into another pandemic, a pandemic of mental health, right? So it's a tough time. And I say this because it's the anxiety and the depression and everything around the pandemic, but underneath all of it, we as a global society are being faced right now with having to confront our mortality because of the sickness and death that is now being brought up as a result of COVID and the pandemic. And the anxiety that surrounds death is very real. There was a man in 1974 named Ernest Becker who wrote a book called The Denial of Death. And it was the building blocks of terror management theory. Terror management theory basically digs into why we as humans tend to avoid the topic of death and dying, why it creates existential terror and dread and paralyzing fear in us, and the internal conflict that we experience as humans when we know rationally on one hand that we're all going to die and that none of us are immortal, but we are also built as humans to survive and procreate. And as a result, it leads to this intense internal conflict that is the reason why we choose consciously and unconsciously to avoid the topic. And I know this all too well. 2 years ago, I was 38 years old. I was an executive at MindBody. I was working full time and fit and athletic, and I had just been on a long run. I was coming back from injury and getting ready to race again, and I found a lump on my breast, and it turned out to be cancer. Keep in mind that friends at the time, minus like the Diet Coke addiction, like I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, and friends would have probably called me, and they did call me like the healthiest person they knew. So it really rocked me. And I was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer, which is the most aggressive, rarest, with the least available treatment options. And unfortunately, even at 38, we didn't catch it early. I was diagnosed stage 3, probably C. I went through 15 months of treatment. So that included, 5 months of chemo, a mastectomy in which I lost my breast, 2 months of daily radiation, and 6 months of oral chemo. And I was told at the beginning of this year even that I had like an 85% chance of outrunning it. And then unfortunately, about 6 weeks after I did my TED Talk, I did a TED Talk called Confronting Death to Live a Fuller Life, which you can find on my website at notimetowasteproject.com. 6 weeks after completing that TED Talk, having a couple short circuit moments, but then having a lot of cognitive processing challenges, we knew something was wrong, and it turns out I had a metastatic brain tumor in my frontal lobe that was the size of a lemon. So it's about this big. That's a big brain tumor. So no wonder I was having a lot of challenges mentally, and then I started to physically deteriorate very quickly as well in April. I had emergency brain surgery. It was intense for those around me, but luckily the surgery went great. It was a complete success, and they called my rapid recovery mentally like one of the fastest that they had ever seen. But then, as I was recovering from that and starting to get my fitness back and feeling good, I started to have respiratory issues in June, and at the end of July, we found out that the cancer had actually spread to my chest, that I would need to go back into treatment, start chemo immediately, and that now my cancer was stage 4, metastatic, and in its terminal phase. I'm waiting right now on scan results that I will get in less than a month that will tell me whether or not the chemo is working, and that will really help determine whether or not I'm looking at a couple years or less, or longer than that, as I've been told to hope for a couple years, but some have lived 5 to 10. We just don't know. So I share this story with you because, I am experiencing the uncertainty, the anxiety, the grief, the despair, at times the loneliness and isolation, that probably all of you have been experiencing this year with the pandemic in some form or another. I understand it intensely. I understand it personally. And I know how hard it is to not know where your finish line is. I think that's one of the most challenging things with this pandemic is like, when's it going to be over? Even if you tell me, okay, it's going to be over in a year, in 2 years, like just tell me where the finish line is, right? I think that for me, independent of my cancer diagnosis, would be one of the hardest things to wrap my head around. Because as an athlete, if it's an ultra marathon, fine, but just tell me where the finish line is. So I share all of this because I feel you. I'm living it. I'm living this, the mental challenges, the emotional stress of the pandemic. I'm feeling it intensely every day because I'm dealing with this on a personal level as well. But it resonates. I feel you. And hopefully we're going to talk about some things today that I do that I think would be helpful for you to navigate these challenging times. And as I like to say, live like there's no time to waste, which I'll talk about in a second. Ernest Becker, the guy who wrote The Denial of Death, explained that, actually what man really fears is not so much extinction, right? But extinction with insignificance. So it's not death and dying that we as humans are really terrified of. It's the idea of no longer living and not having had meaning and significance while we were alive, right? So what I talk about is living like there's no time to waste. What that means is, confronting mortality head on, crafting a life without regret, and maximizing moments by focusing on what I think are the things that really matter. And I talk a lot about gratitude, human connection, and joy. And I'm going to talk you through and actually walk you through some exercises that we're going to do today that are going to help you lean into those things, going to help you craft, even if we're living in the worst year ever, craft the best day ever, so that when you put your head down on the pillow at night, you can look back on your day and say, if I didn't wake up tomorrow morning, right, which is a tragic reality that has happened and will continue to happen to a small percentage of people, you would look back on your day and your life and go, you know what, I would be okay. That's the goal from my perspective. I am trying to live every 24 hours like that so that I don't have any regrets. And I look back whenever I am on my deathbed, be it next year or 10 years from now. That's how I try and live. So we're going to start first. I think it's really important in order to live like there's no time to waste, maximize your moments. Simon Sinek, who a lot of you probably know, did this fantastic TED Talk where he talked about the why. And he wrote a book called What's Your Why? In order for you as, accounting and finance professionals, I talked earlier about how much time we spend at work and how important it is to bring your whole self to work. I think it's really important for every single one of us to, especially you guys, to tap into, what was it? What was it about? Why are you here? Why are you in your job? Why are you in this industry? What was it about your current company or your current organization that caused you to say, yeah, I want to go work for them? Because I think when you can get in touch with that why, it will help you feel like, we're not going into the office, most of us right now, but logging in every day to Zoom in the morning with your coffee while your kids are screaming outside your door or whatever your home environment's like, it will help remind you of the meaning and significance of the work that you're doing, so that you're not just going through the day checking things off, because that leads to disengagement, number one, but number two, it leads to a feeling of just the blahs and a lack of purpose and meaning. So the first exercise that we're going to do is around what's your why. I want everyone right now, hopefully you have some sort of a pen or paper or maybe a phone where you can take notes. But I want you to think about why you chose this career path. Were you young and, were you a kid and you said, I want to be an accountant? Were you like, I want to be a CFO? How did that path happen? You know that, and you're not going to share that with me right now. But what I do think you should share with yourself or revisit is I want you to take 30 seconds right now, and I want you to write down the why. Not what happened and how it happened, but why. Why did you end up choosing this career path? Or why did you end up choosing the company where you are right now, or the job that you're in today currently? What's the why? Why did you do it? Not the how or the what. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I'm going to literally step away from the screen, and I'm going to have you fill that out. So write that down. Answer the question, why? What's your why? I'm back. I had to get some water. Hopefully that, I'm just going to change this because it looks like it's not as, let's see. Okay, so hopefully you figured that out. And let's just make sure. Autofocus. Is it getting confused? Okay, so moving on while I figure out my camera challenges. The second thing I want to talk about is gratitude. And I mentioned this. I said, when I'm talking about living life like there's no time to waste, I talk about gratitude. And you would think, potentially in my situation, that it would be challenging for me to find things I'm grateful for, when the reality is I have terminal cancer. And my therapist would say that it's helpful for me to continue to say that. But I believe that mindset is everything. I believe that mindset can transform your perception of reality, so that even if things don't change on the outside, when your mindset changes, you view and perceive the world differently. And the great part is you can't control so much of life, right? But you can control your mindset and your perception around what's happening. And in my experience, the last 2 years of going through this cancer journey, I have found that the fastest way, an almost guaranteed way to change my mindset is through gratitude. Because gratitude, as they say, the quote, turns everything we have into enough. I have a tattoo on my wrist that I got years and years ago. I think you can see it. It is Sanskrit for contentment, santosh or santosha. As many of you, I'm sure, can relate, as a fast-moving type A professional, I have always been focused on the next thing. And how do we make things better or faster or cheaper or more efficient? And I just have an internal drive system that professionally has been very helpful in my career, because I essentially have a relentless drive that doesn't quit. But on the flip side, when it comes to being content in the current moment, that has always been a challenge for me. Ironic that it has taken cancer for me to become really content with the simple things in life and not want anything more, because my bar is so low. All I want to do now is live. So gratitude, though, gratitude is the fastest way, in my experience, to get to a mindset shift that we can control, that can essentially change our perception of the world and improve it. So something that I do, that I have, is a gratitude jar. I have a gratitude jar that I made sort of as an arts and crafts project a couple of years ago when I was going through a rough time emotionally. And I think I got the idea from Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, that many of you probably know. And this gratitude jar at night, or whenever I feel compelled, has a bunch of little papers. I think I just took literally like a paper and cut it up. I think I have index cards that I cut in half and folded. But I write down on each one of the small pieces of paper just one thing that I'm really grateful for. And I date it. And I put that into the gratitude jar. And be it at the end of the week, end of the month, or I used to do it at the end of the year, I would dump out my gratitude jar with all these moments. And some people might be like, well, I don't have 3 things that I could say that I'm grateful for. 1, I would challenge you to like look a little deeper. 2, I would say, don't overthink it. You could be grateful for little stuff. I could be grateful. I'll tell you what I'm grateful for this morning. So let's see, I keep mirroring it. There we go. This is a wig. You'll see some photos of me in a little bit. But I'm bald underneath of this because of chemo. And I am grateful that I feel like my wig is like looking pretty great this morning. And I feel confident physically, and, not having eyebrows, or hair right now as a woman, I'm sure you all can relate, is especially if I feel good inside, it's like every time I walk past a mirror, I double take and go, oh my God, that's me. Oh my God, I have cancer. Oh my God. And it's like, almost like it's like death by 1,000 cuts. The trauma is kind of brought up every single time I look in the mirror, multiple times a day. So I'm super grateful, and I'm dead serious. I'm really grateful that I feel confident this morning, and I'm like wearing a blazer, and I feel like I'm in professional mode, and that I'm back, speaking in front of an audience. And even though it's virtual, I have a whole professional setup that's here, and I feel good and I look good. So that's what I'm grateful for. It could be, you did your laundry yesterday and you found a $5 bill in your jeans before you washed them, and you're like, score. So don't overthink it, right? It could be little stuff. There's the gratitude jar that I was talking about. It is a real thing. I took a picture of it. It exists. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to do the next exercise, which I'm excited about, which is 3 things. I just gave you examples. It could be like my coffee was delicious. We just changed beans. Someone gave us a bunch of coffee, and my partner and I were like, oh, great. We're so excited. Look at all this like coffee. And we ground the beans, and we've been like living with this coffee that we just haven't even liked for like weeks. And like last night I was like, why are we doing this? Let's go back to our regular coffee. And we went back to our regular coffee. And this morning we both were like, this coffee is delicious. So I would put down also looking good this morning with my glamour wig. I would put down 2, my coffee this morning was delicious. So again, don't overthink it. It's about the little things that like light you up, and make you go, yeah, I am grateful for that. I am grateful that it's not raining or snowing here in Boulder because the weather is crazy. So I want you right now, pull out that same piece of paper that you just put, what's your why? And I want you to title it gratitude. And I want you to think about 3 things and write them down that you're grateful for. And I'd encourage you, your gratitude, if you want to make a gratitude jar, if you want to make a gratitude box, if you want to like literally be like, I'm just going to take that Amazon box or that shoe box or whatever it is, and I'm just going to put it next to my bed. You don't have to decorate it like I did. But I'm just going to put it next to my bed or under my bed or somewhere in my office, somewhere where I can see it. And that's where I'm going to put my little notes. And hopefully, at least for me, when I see something regularly, it like reminds me. But hopefully that's something that, building a daily gratitude practice into your life, I don't believe is like a foo-foo thing. I don't associate it with religion or even really spirituality. Like, I see it on many days as a very practical way to instantly shift my mindset into what I have versus what I don't have. And that has the power over time to, there's a ton of data and research around it, actually change the system in your brain so that it becomes more wired towards positivity and optimism and hope and faith. And those are things that I need right now, which is why thinking about or going back to, okay, what am I grateful right now, is now ingrained into my life every day. And I believe it can help everybody. Okay, so hopefully you wrote those down. Maybe it made you smile. Hopefully it did. And the third thing I'm going to talk about is leaning into joy. So that's a photo of me going through chemo the first time 2 years ago. I had a yellow lab at the time named Cooper. Rest in peace, Cooper. And she, as I was getting diagnosed in the first couple of weeks of that experience, my dog Cooper, who was 12 at the time, had a seizure. And that day I had to go up to Stanford to get a second opinion on my diagnosis and my treatment plan. And I was like, okay, so my dog had a grand mal seizure. She survived. Clearly this is a sign that something's horribly wrong. She's going to die soon. I have to start chemo next week because of how advanced my cancer is that I just found out about. I'm not going to go through chemo and go through winter and cancer without a dog in my house. And so my partner and I got a puppy, and we got a Labradoodle puppy because, by the way, why wouldn't you start chemo and cancer treatment and get a puppy like all at the same time? That's not crazy, right? I'm sure some of you have done crazier things. But in retrospect, like, was it the smartest thing? Probably not. But I basically was like, I have cancer and I want a puppy and Cooper's gonna die and I can't handle an empty house. So those of you who have dogs probably can relate. But that is Roberta, aka Birdie, aka Bert, or the Bert. She is the birdiest, which is what we say. And that's a picture. And I do have to say, she brings me joy every time I interact with her, even though she is at daycare right now with her other dog friends, because I can't risk her crying or barking when I'm doing a keynote like this. So we're going to talk about leaning into joy as one way to live like there's no time to waste. Here are photos of me, pre-cancer. So I've always been someone who has lived for adventure, be it travel, sports, just sort of, I've always wanted to kind of do all the things. And for me, these are the types of things and experiences that light me up, right? Being outside in nature, the outdoors, sports, travel, as I mentioned. For you, leaning into joy might be gardening, might be book club with your girlfriends, might be cooking, or like growing a vegetable garden, which I feel like a lot of people are doing right now. Like making sourdough starters. I don't exactly even know what that is, but I know that like there was a time at the beginning of the pandemic where like everyone was talking about sourdough starters. I'm not a great cook, so like I wouldn't know. It could be leaning into joy for you. Could be spending time with your kids, spending time with your dogs or your cat or your bird. It could be anything. It could be that morning cup of coffee that I mentioned that for me was so good this morning. It could be like blow drying your hair, maybe putting on some real pants, taking the athleisure off, which, just to let you know, I am business up top, and I am Lululemon spandex and cool Nike sneaks on my bottom right now. So maybe it's getting dressed up or not getting dressed up, pants or no pants. Joy, leaning into joy, I believe, again, when you look back at your 24-hour period, you look back at your day, and you feel like, okay, I've got no regrets. I believe part of living your best life, regardless of your situation, is leaning into joy, smiling, laughing, and doing those things that light you up, that are very personal to you. I think social media, causes us, especially a lot of the younger generations, to compare ourselves to other people, to look at what lights other people up or seems to light other people up in their Instagram feed or their Facebook feed, and wonder why we aren't doing those same things, even if we took a deeper look and went, I don't even like that, or I don't even want to do that. I'd rather read a book than go to some busy club or event or concert. And I think leaning into joy, again, is really, really personal and something that everyone should explore on their own and find out what lights them up. I'm realizing you can't really see this. Let's see. Okay. This is better, maybe this is better, because who needs to see me as the shining star? So you can see just photos of me. Again, look at me. I guess if you saw me with no hair, I would look very different. But these are the fit days. But you know what? This photo here, I don't know if you can see it in the top right-hand corner on a safari vehicle. That's an example of, continuing to lean into joy despite cancer and going through cancer treatment. And so that was a bucket list or life list, which I'm going to talk about in a second, life list trip that I took with my little sister to South Africa last fall. The second I was given kind of the freedom to travel again after treatment, or while I was still taking pill chemo, but I was okay, I said, done. Money, can't take it with you. We're going to South Africa. We're going on safari. It's a sister trip, and you know what? I have no regrets. It was an unbelievable experience, and something I was very grateful to get to do. So again, these are some of my things. And what I'm showing you right now is, I'm going to tell you about it first. So what I like to talk about is a life list. When I was 15 years old, long before everything happened with this cancer stuff, I wrote down, and I actually have the paper that I found recently going through stuff. I wrote down, I put on top of the ruled paper, right? Remember paper, writing on things? Life list. And I started to put down empty check boxes of all the things I wanted to do, things I wanted to see, things that were aspirational, things I wanted to give. I just wrote things down, cars I wanted to drive. Just at 15, I was already tapped into this concept of leading into joy. And that's what I did. I started my life list, and I continued to add to it. And the cool thing was, as I got older, I started to get to check some of those things off. And some of them are big. Some of them are big, like I've had on my life list, go on an African safari, probably since my teens. But I've also had things I've wanted to, little things on there. Find my signature cocktail, which I did long before when I used to drink. I don't drink anymore. Things like give a deserving restaurant server a $100 tip, which I did last year on my way from California to Colorado, where I live now. We were in the boonies of Utah. On our drive, we stopped at a Cracker Barrel, which I had never been to, and I was able to give this fantastic server we had on a probably $11 bill. I was able to give her a $100 cash tip, and she was blown away, and I ran out the door and didn't want to take any time because that's not what it's about. And I was able to check off something on my life list, and that was awesome. So your life list can also be things that you want to give to. It's not just about stuff you want to buy or places you want to go. So here is a copy of my then digitized life list that includes some things that are, you're like, okay, and other things that are absolutely ridiculous. But that is mine. It keeps going. You'll see there, it's a lot of exactly what is behind you: travel, trips, but also, starting my own business, complete an ultra marathon, meet Sandra Bullock, which I don't have time for it, but it's a whole nother story. I've had meeting Sandra Bullock on my life list since I was 16 years old. I just was like obsessed with her as a kid. And no joke, last year, in between chemo and my mastectomy surgery, I had 1 week, and I convinced my oncologist that I needed to spend that 1 week snowboarding because it's one of my passions, and I couldn't do it while I was in treatment. And so in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, at the bar, I'm sitting there and I go, oh my God, Sandra Bullock just walked in with her family. And it was one of the most surreal moments of my life, but that was on my life list. And I believe that the universe is very, very responsive to what we ask for, but we have to write it down. So you're going to start your life list right now. What I want you to do, I know you probably had a piece of paper where you were writing down the other two. I want you to grab your phone, and I want you to find the notes function, and I want you to start a note right now, and I want you to title it Life List. Okay, so hopefully you found it, but you're going to title it Life List. And right now, I want you to put one thing on that list. You're going to start it right now. I want you to put one thing down, one place you want to go, one thing you want to do. It could be like, I just added to it the other day, play piano again. I used to play piano, and I quit when I was like 14, and I really, really loved it. And I love music just in general. And I was like, I want to play piano again. I don't have a piano, by the way. I don't know how I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll get like a keyboard. Like, I don't know, but I don't know the details of it. It's okay if you don't know the details of it, but I was like, that would bring me a lot of joy. And I want to write that down. And so that's probably the first time I've added something to my life list in a little while. So just come up with one thing right now. Don't worry about how it's going to happen. If it's like a bucket list trip, you can add that to it. Just doesn't have to be bucket list items. But I want you to start that life list right now, because as I said, there's no time to waste. And then tonight before you go to bed, I want you to write one more thing down on that list. And I want you to keep adding to it. Keep adding to it. And then figure out how you can start to craft your life so that you can begin to check those off. Because these are the little things that when they add up, bring significance and meaning to your life. They light you up, and they basically have the potential, along with gratitude and understanding your purpose, to help you feel like you are living. You are really, really living. You are squeezing all the marrow out of life. And these are the things that contribute to not having regrets when you look back on your life, which hopefully is a very, very long time from now. But also it could be a lot sooner than we think, right? I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we're all going to die, right? It's the only universal inevitability, is the fact that we're not immortal. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a really tough thing for us as humans to accept. But I believe that if we have the courage to confront that reality, if we are vulnerable enough to share with someone that we trust our fears around it, that it will give us the motivation and the inspiration to live a more intentional life, to maximize our moments, right? To, as I say, carpe the shit out of life. Because I don't want to just carpe diem. I don't want to just seize the day. I want to seize life, and I want to seize the crap out of it, which is why I say carpe the shit out of life. right? Ernest Becker, the guy who wrote The Denial of Death that I talked about in the beginning, said, guilt results from the unused life, from the unlived in us. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be looking death in the eye and looking back on my day or my life and going, there was more for me to live. There's unlived life in me. I believe, though, if you are more aware of this, if you can take some of the exercises from today, that you will have the opportunity to really feel every day now like you are living life like there is no time to waste. Like you are being intentional with your time. You are maximizing your moments. You are not worrying about the BS anymore. You are giving 110% at work, but you are also promising yourself that you are not going to let work take so much out of you that when you return, even if it's in the same house in this work from home situation, that when you return to your family after work, that you have nothing left to give. Because the top 5 deathbed regrets consistently in every research study fall into 5 categories, right? 1 is, I wish I worked less. 2 is, I wish I said I love you more. 3 is, I wish I kept in touch with friends. 4, I don't remember 4 and 5. If you watch my TED Talk, I remember all 5 of them. It's on my website at notimetowasteproject.com, or you can just search Alison Hadden TED Talk. But doing all of these things combined are what essentially leads to crafting a life without regret. And that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is going, why didn't I do that thing? Why didn't I say yes to that? Why did I play it safe, right? And I am not doing that anymore. And as a result, at the end of every single day, I can honestly say that I look back and I go, I have no regrets about how I live today. I said I love you to people even when I got scared or even when it seemed like a little bit much, I did things that leaned into joy. I danced with my dog and sang out loud when I was in the house by myself. I had the ice cream after dinner. I just didn't have a lot of it, but I had the ice cream. I focus my time on getting this message of living life like there's no time to waste out and shared with as many people as possible, because it's my personal legacy now. Mortality legacy awareness is the closer you get to death, the more you become concerned and potentially obsessed with what you're going to leave behind, right? And this message of living life like there's no time to waste is my personal legacy. So I'm grateful that I have a platform, getting back to gratitude. I'm super grateful that I have a platform and an opportunity to share these kinds of things with you and with other audiences all over the world. It's a freaking privilege. And I'm so grateful that I have it. Because if not, I'd just be sitting around in chemo every day or waiting for chemo and in treatment, and that sounds awful. So I'm grateful that my brain can still be engaged and that there's no lemon in there right now, hopefully. So I leave you with this, continue to do the things that I shared, and I promise you, your life will start to feel different, even if nothing on the outside changes. If you want to continue to follow my story and my journey, please follow me on Instagram if you're there at No Time to Waste Project. Go to my website at notimetowasteproject.com, where you can find the TED Talk that I mentioned. And starting next week, actually, when this airs, you can also find the No Time to Waste podcast on all your podcast platforms. So wherever you find your podcasts, search No Time to Waste. You'll find my podcast where I interview inspirational adventurers, spiritual seekers, trailblazers, exceptionally good humans, and we talk about what it means to live fully. I just want to say again, thank you to the organization for inviting me to speak. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your conference. Don't forget to live and love like there is no time to waste. Thank you.